You're listening to The Back 40, the podcast for Ontario farmers, covering topics and issues that matter most to Ontario agriculture. Brought to you by Trillium Mutual Insurance, bringing the ag community together one podcast at a time. I'm the host of The Back 40, Mike Bryan, agribusiness specialist at Trillium Mutual Insurance. A couple of months ago, we spoke to Jen Fenning of Fenning's Organic Vegetables about some of the things facing organic workers on the farms where they're employed. Jen outlined some of the issues and shared some of the solutions to the problems. In particular, she said she would be proud to share her community with both the migrant workers that are employed at her farm and with their families. Recently, the federal government announced a temporary program that would allow a pathway to permanent residency for some of the workers that are employed in the agricultural industry. We caught up with Jen to get her take on what this means for the workers on her farm.
It's a really hopeful step. This is a pathway that has not existed for my workers ever. I know that there are a good number of our team that are eager to apply. So I'll be working with them to help them meet the requirements, particularly the language skill level that they have to be tested for. And I applaud the government for doing this. You know, this is a great first step, but we have to do more. We have to take it further, and we need to increase the numbers that we're going to allow to apply. As the government recognized in their statement about this temporary policy, these are essential workers. We all have acknowledged that in this country. It's time to actually acknowledge it by allowing them to stay. They've proven that they have value to us, both as a society and as an economy. So I'm challenging the government to make it permanent and increase that cap even for this year.
What sort of challenges will your workers face in order to qualify through this program, and what are you doing to help them out with those challenges?
Most of the temporary foreign workers don't have even secondary school education. They can speak and read and write. But in talking to people who've actually taken what's called the Canadian Language Benchmark Level 4, there are Canadians who've graduated high school, and spoke to one woman who actually has post-secondary, and she said she didn't score quite as high as she expected she would on that very test. So that's going to be a challenge for them. So I've been working on recruiting tutors, and they're going to offer free tutoring. You know what's really, really amazing about this? These are not people that I know. These are not my friends who have some personal connection to migrant workers or social justice through this particular program. These are just people who saw a need and understand and accept and realize that these people are essential workers and that they are valuable human beings. And they are putting themselves out there to help them achieve that level. And to me, that is just one of the most amazing things. It's a real bright spot in what's been a challenging year.
We appreciate Jen taking the time to provide us with a little bit more insight into this and an update on what's going on with the migrant workers. As we spoke, she was getting set to welcome the majority of her workers. They were scheduled to arrive at her farm the next day, and then they would face their 14-day quarantine before they would be able to work in the fields. And now we continue with this week's podcast. As you drive down the roads in rural Ontario, you notice that there are getting to be fewer and fewer individual farms, and we know that the farms in Ontario are getting larger. We're down to approximately 1% of our population that looks after the task of feeding us. But it's still good to see some of the names that have been in the community for many years. Maplevue Farms is owned by Doug and Dave Johnston, and it's in the Listowel area. And it's a multi-generational farm in business farming since 1893. Dave and Doug, welcome to the Back 40.
Great, thank you.
So Dave, can you tell us a little bit about just how exactly you got started in the area and a little bit about your ancestors?
Thank you very much. Yes, so Doug and I are the fifth generation to farm on this home farm here, located just north of the hamlet of Britton, just outside of Listowel. Our great-grandfathers came here to this area, bought it from the Crown. There's two farms here that are across the road from each other. 4 generations later, our dad took over the farm from his father. He started into the dairy in the late 50s when he got married. My grandfather moved across the road at that point. They were dairy over there and some pigs and some other stuff over there as well, a bit of a mixed farm. Since the milk board started, we had been shipping milk every other day since the mid-60s when supply management came in. Doug and I both graduated from the University of Guelph in the late 80s. Doug in 87 and I graduated in 89. After I graduated, we started a partnership between Doug and I and our mother and father. And then that moved into a corporation. The corporation started in the mid to late 90s. Everything kind of changed one evening in February of 97 when Dad passed away. We were lucky enough that the corporation was already started and was in Doug and my hands so that the farm could carry on seamlessly at that point. Doug and I have been farming together since the late 80s.
So, Doug, what's it like to farm with your brother? I know that's a close relationship working with family like that. My brother lives in Fergus and I live near St. Mary's. We've never gotten along better since we're that distance apart. How is it to farm with your brother?
So Dave and I grew up together. We were always the youngest two. Dave was supposed to be a girl. That was kind of the joke. That's why they had another kid, but he ended up being a boy. Dave and I were always the tag along because we were the two younger ones. Mom always also said that she also wanted twins. And the closest she got was Doug and Dave. And we're 2 years and 2 weeks apart. We basically grew up together. We've done everything together. We've done sports together. We've done 4-H together. I went to university. I came home, Dave went to university, and we've basically grown up together. We've kept business on business, personal on personal. We've supported each other. We have our moments, but basically, you have your moment, you walk away, and eventually, 5 minutes later, everything's good. So I couldn't think of anybody else I'd sooner farm with. We've basically raised each other's kids because both our wives work off the farm. Sometimes an uncle does a good job of helping look after the kids, and it's worked both ways.
Some days Doug spends a lot of time with my kids, and I spend a lot of time with his kids. So it seems to work, and there's not many a day I don't go by that I don't see at least one of Doug's kids somewhere around the farm. I end up working with Doug's son quite a bit right now, and Doug ends up working with one of my 3 sons quite a bit, it seems, right now as well. So it does work both ways. I will definitely say there's been the odd day that hasn't been the greatest, but we've had some trials and some tribulations as well. We've been through death of both parents. We've been through a large fire. We've persevered through it, and I think we've prospered as well. And most days, now with cell phones, there's some days that when we're busy, I don't know what the record is. I think it's pushing 40 phone calls a day back and forth between us. So communication is kind of a key as well. Plus, the other thing I think that makes it easier is we both have our specialties. I can tell you the pedigree on every cow in the barn and likely back 5-6 generations, but don't ask me what kind of corn we grow other than Pioneer, and I can't tell you any numbers unless I write it down and how much fertilizer we use and that kind of stuff. That is not my cup of tea, but Doug can tell you, exactly how many pounds of nitrogen we put on every wheat crop and what wheat seed it is and what variety of corn is planted in every field. That's his area of expertise. So I think part of it is that we each have our area of expertise. And we both do some off-farm stuff and some stuff away from the farm that gets us a little bit away. For almost 33 years, I've auctioned 1 day a week at Ontario Livestock Exchange in St. Jacob. So that gets me away for a bit of a day as well.
I think the other thing, we open the communications, we talk a lot, but we're best friends most days.
That doesn't stop the occasional disagreement, but if at the end of the day you can walk away with, it was disagreement about something, not a personality disagreement, you're going to do just fine.
It helps us in some ways because we don't have to make the decision myself. If we get pushed into trying to make a decision, we just say we're not making a decision without talking to the other partner. Everything is decided together and not always one person pushing one way or the other.
And I think once Doug realized that I was going to win every argument, it was fine.
And by the way, he wasn't born the last time the Leafs won the cup, and I was in diapers, so we will remember that.
For our listeners here, we have a Toronto Maple Leafs fan and a Montreal Canadiens fan here, and I'm not including myself in that discussion there. That must make for some interesting discussions all on its own.
Always has. So there's 4 of us Johnson boys, 2 Leafs and 2 Habs. So it's always made for interesting discussions.
Well, at least it's a fair fight.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. Sort of. No, it's never fair if the Leafs are involved.
But it's nice because when we get together as a family, we got 2 off-farm brothers that come home. Well, not so much with COVID, but when we get together for whatever, Christmas, weddings, we always get a good game of cards going, and it goes on for hours and hours into the night, and you never know what we end up talking about.
What exactly are you milking in? How many cows? And tell us a little bit about the operation.
Years ago, Doug and I made the decision that we had to work smarter, not harder. And the old tie stall barn was wearing both of us out. Doug was going up and down a lot of silos. My hips and knees were starting to fall apart from 30 plus years in the tie stall. So we decided robots were the way to go. We researched for 4 to 5 years, and we looked everywhere on this farm to put a barn. And every time we turned around, it came back to the same spot that the old barn was situated. So on April 3rd of 2018, we moved our cows 15 miles away to Moncton, Ontario, to another dairy farm. And April 6th, we had an auction sale, and we sold everything in that old barn. We sold the water bowls, the light bulbs, the cow chains, the trainers, the silos, the silo unloaders. We even sold the barn. And then by May 1st, the barn was gone, and we put our new barn. So we're milking in a brand new 2-year-old now robotic dairy barn.
We went bunk silos. We wanted to enjoy the barn and not wait till we were wore out. We're probably 5 to 10 years ahead of when normal people would do it. We built the barn 2 years into it. It was going really well. And it was a year ago right now that we come up with the idea of looking for something for a couple of the kids that were getting either out of university or almost out of university. And we actually bought a second dairy farm 11 kilometers away. We bought a tie stall barn and started milking in it in August 1st of last year.
So how many cattle are you milking at each property?
We're milking 55 at the home farm on 2 robots, and we're milking 48 in the tie stall barn.
Now with 2 robots, you've left yourself an option there for expansion, right?
We are hoping to continue to grow our quota holdings. Also, twice since we've been in this barn, we have taken in another herd of cows for 2, 3, 4 months while other people renovated or built a new barn as well. So there is room for that. But yes, there's lots of room. When we moved home 70, 75 cows, and now we're down to 52. The production's doing that well.
So you're enjoying the robots as opposed to the tie stall where you get to bend down and squat down beside the cows twice a day?
We're not missing the physical part of it. We're enjoying milking cows again. I'm actually back playing hockey again because I went 5 or 6 years I couldn't play hockey. My knees were too sore. Dave's health, his hips have gone a lot better until he started milking a little bit in the tie stall again.
I go over to the tie stall a couple of times a week to help my son over there, but I absolutely love the robot milker. I love the way it looks after the cows, the quality of the milk, the health of the cows. Now that we're in it several years and these cows are calving for the 3rd time on the robots, it's absolutely crazy the amount of production they can do.
We've also expanded our land base in the last 15 years since Dave and I have been in control. Dave and I have purchased 500-600 acres over the last number of years, trying to buy the right farm at the right time.
They don't come up very often. As somebody says, land usually comes available about once a generation. You need to be able to take advantage of it when it happens.
And that's something we've tried to do. Our dad always had a saying that keep buying dirt because they don't make any more of it. So he was good at buying farms. And we've kind of carried on that we just said, anything that comes up close that we can afford, we've been making a pretty good run at it.
We were lucky that we had 11 years to work with Dad, and then we learned a lot back and forth before he dropped over dead. Those years, we always swore we'd never become our dad, and unfortunately, both of us look at each other almost every day. We called him Chief, and we actually feel like we're coming more like Chief all the time. Anybody that knew our dad, he was pretty easygoing and a lot of fun, and we try to keep fun in the category too.
It's important, and especially, as I said before, if you're working with family there, you've got to keep it a little bit light. And besides which, if you're not going to have fun doing it, you're probably doing the wrong thing.
If you're not having fun farming, and I tell you, if I can't make a joke or poke fun at one of Doug's kids or my kids or whoever, or even Doug a lot of days with the kids, that it makes for long, boring days. But if you can work away at doing something and have some fun doing it, man, it sure makes the time pass quick. And I think you get more productivity out of people if they're enjoying and they're having fun what they're doing.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's no question about that.
I think the other thing that really has helped us is Mom was a school teacher, a lot of supply teaching over the years. She started having farm meetings, and especially succession farm meetings. To this day, we actually still have at least a monthly meeting on the farm with all the kids, even the kids that aren't involved with the farm. We have a nice meeting room now We have an evening where we get together and talk about things and talk about plans and who's doing what and throwing ideas around. And I think that's where a lot of our decisions really develop from. Very open, very frank. Yes, we have some fun at it, but everybody has a rough idea what's going on and why we're doing stuff.
So you're running both a tie stall and a robotic barn. Do you notice a lot of difference in the production that you get out of the two different facilities?
Yes, the production out of the robot is a lot easier to get high production out of. It's easier on the cows. We are building up the herd in the tie stall. When we took over, we actually traded the herds out. We sold the herd that we purchased. We bought another herd. As the cows calve, we're getting more and more production out of all the time. But the production of the tie stall cannot touch the robot. We're finding in the robot, the better cows you put in, the better they can do. The production in the robot, the cows do it so easy and so naturally, and the quality of life that they have without stressing their udders and stuff, it's absolutely awesome. And the reproduction in the robot barn is untouchable in a tie stall.
The other interesting thing about the robot is we had to forget everything about the tie stall and learn about trusting a computer. The robots tell you a lot of information, but now that we're back with the tie stall, we actually have to try to remember how we did milk in the tie stall and bring some things back that we actually tried to forget.
Yeah, there's a lot of information that those computers will collect for you. I know one of my neighbors put one in and he was down here and I asked him how it was going. He was 6 months into it and he says, well, just about all the cows are trained and all of them are coming except for one. And he pulled out his phone and he said, I left her by the milker when I left. She milked 10 minutes after I walked out the door. And I thought, like, now that's pretty cool when you can tell me that from your phone, that up to date as to how much that they milked. And he was milking 45 in a 22 stall, tie stall barn.
I find now my most important time of the day is first thing in the morning, spending 10 minutes going through the computer and looking for cows that's down on milk or somatic cells up or rumination. You know, I had no idea what our rumination was in the tie stall, but I can almost tell you what every cow ruminates a day now, because I watch it and I watch for trends that, you know, if you got a cow that's fresh 10 days and her rumination starting to drop, we got to go figure out why. Whether she's getting ketosis, is she getting pneumonia, what's sore foot? You can tell all that by activity and by rumination. I didn't think I'd ever say it, but I've become a computer dairy farmer.
I think it's also neat that the kids have really taken up on the technology. They actually were the ones that didn't mind milking in the tie stall. So they do most of the work over at the tie stall barn and are enjoying it. The kids have a lot of fun. They're learning a lot. I think through COVID, our kids have really got along better and it's become a really close knit group. Our whole family, you know, they're there to support each other. 5.5 years ago, I had a major health scare. I had to have open heart surgery and I was off for a while. And it's amazing how them kids, no problem getting up at 5:30 to do chores before they went to school. And they still remember doing that. It's a family farm, true and true.
It's a character building exercise. And I know that I had to pick stones and I had to get up early. And I always thought it was a hardship. But, you know, you always did it and you look back on it. It was good for us. It was, as I said, one of those character building exercises. Do you like what you're hearing from the Back 40? We'd like to hear from you. Send us an email with your comments and thoughts to theback40@trilliummutual.com or follow us on social media @trilliummutual. You've talked about that your family is closer during COVID. We've seen a lot of different changes on how we do business over the last 13 months. What have you noticed different about how you go about doing your daily chores and anything that's changed because of the COVID situation?
Dave and I always did get along and both of us are pretty social. The biggest problem I see right now is he's my social life most days. He gets to go away once a week. He goes down to Kitchener to auctioneer, but I really don't have anybody. There's been some days that you kind of wonder you're in front of a computer too much. You don't have a chance to talk to too many people. That's the biggest thing for me is it's just become family and that's your own little bubble.
There's not many good things about COVID, but the only good thing I can say is there's no more drive-in salespeople. Nobody drives in the farm trying to sell anything. Most of those people don't get very far with me, depending on my humor of the day. And we do keep a large dog around this farm, but it's mostly just for show, because she is the friendliest thing ever. But she can scare the odd salesperson. But that's the only good thing I can see coming out of COVID. The cold call salespeople are gone. That's a thing of the past. And I do enjoy not being interrupted.
Everything will be done by appointment and much of it will be done over a Zoom call or over a telephone call.
If you don't have our cell phone numbers, then you're not important enough to be making an appointment with Doug and I. You know, we deal with who we deal with, and they have our numbers and have us on speed dial. If they need us, they find us, and vice versa. If we need our vet, I have her phone number, and if we need our feed guy, he gets a call.
We've talked a lot about the dairy farm, but the grain side of it is 50% of the income too. The grain side's done very well. We do some custom work for some neighbors. It works well. The labor force here is all family. We had a couple of retired guys help us a little bit, but kids are old enough to the point now where they actually do probably more of the custom work. We get them started and away they go, and they're actually doing more and more all the time. So it's just another little part of it that adds to the whole operation.
We laugh about some of our busiest days when we get 4 to 5 tractors in 4 to 5 different fields, and often I'm never in a tractor. I'm kind of the guy driving around in the pickup truck, keeping everybody running and checking in on barn here or barn there or tractor there and keeping the planter running or the combine. And those seem to be the really good days, is when I can avoid a tractor and just kind of be the manager. Doug's usually either in the planter or the combine, but at some point, one of the kids is going to step in and take over that job as well, so that Doug can slow his days down a little bit. It is pretty cool when you step back someday and say, man, we just covered X amount of acres today, and I never drove a tractor.
We always say at the end of the day, Dave, what did you really do today? And he says, well, I don't know. I didn't do a lot, but I think I put more miles on than everybody. He also keeps everybody fed, watered, happy, not asleep. We try to prevent any accidents. We do practice farm safety here pretty hard. We've avoided any major incidents as the kids were growing up, and it was always a priority of our mother to make sure that the kids were safe. We raised the kids because both our wives work off the farm. A lot of times we had 4 to 6 to 7 kids in the barn at nights. It made for interesting, challenging times, but they've all grown up in the barn.
That's how you learn about the operation. It's never too early to start teaching about farm safety for kids either. You don't want to give them too much to handle, but certainly you want to teach them as early as possible where the danger spots are on a farm. So how many acres are you farming for yourself, and what sort of services do you offer as far as custom farming goes?
We're just under 2,000 acres now. There's almost 1,500 was owned within the family. Dave has a farm, I have a farm, Dave and I have a farm together. Our off-farm siblings have a farm that we rent back, but we consider that part of the farm ownership. Maplevue Farms owns a little bit more than 600 acres. We look after probably 400 to 500 acres for a couple other guys too. We run a fair number of acres. We don't take on any more than we think we can do in a normal year. We like to get it done, go hard, get it done, and drive on to the next job. One other thing that we've done on our farm related to the grain part of it, I challenged Dad that I wanted to no-till back in the 80s. I remember I was just a little kid, and I 14 or 15, and I rented a no-till drill, and we actually put no-till wheat in one year, and I put 30 acres in, and Dad did 30 acres right beside his way. And I remember I got 73 bushel, he got 71 bushel, and we've never worked another piece of wheat ground again. So we actually developed into a no-till situation with wheat and beans. We actually sold the plow. Dad used to do all the plowing of the corn stalks in the fall. I was married 6 weeks when Dad dropped over dead. And that fall, I spent numerous months in the plow at night. It was no fun plowing most of the night. So we sold the plow that year. And now we've got into vertical tillage, no-till, vertical till, and we don't do any recreational tillage anymore. We may not get top yields, but we definitely use cover crops. We use a lot of manure. We take manure for a lot of neighbors. Most of our soil sees at least 1 or 2 types of manure every year. We're quite happy with where our soil tilth is. We like to feed the worms.
Dad was a seed grower for many years, and we've carried that along. So all of our beans and all of our wheat are contracted for seed through Pioneer.
We actually just got our 35-year certificate as a seed grower through the Seed Growers Association last year.
That takes a little bit of dedication there, because it's a little bit more finicky to grow the beans or the wheat for seed. And there's a lot of things that you can do that turn them into just a commercial crop as opposed to something that's getting a premium there.
But it's, once again, the kids have always grown up with that. And when my son was planting wheat last fall and we're switching varieties, it's just common nature, the second nature. Now they pull up in front of the shed and she's vacuumed out. We're switching varieties or switching fields, clean it out. And, the vacuum cleaner sits there and every kernel gets vacuumed out. Same thing when we're switching varieties with the combine. The kids just know, we got to run X amount of bushels through the combine and it goes for commercial. because we're switching varieties through the combine, through the buggy, through the auger. It's all got to be purged through. It's just second nature for the kids, and same thing as we grew up. And sometimes that seed premium is your profit for the year, and it doesn't take that much work when you're used to doing it.
Yeah, it's just attention to detail on it. Make sure that you say that you vacuum everything out, that you purge stuff when you're combining, that you don't mix something up and put it into the wrong bin or something along that lines.
And Doug has to make lists for me of what varieties where, so that I know which field we're going to next, and what varieties in what bin, because I can't remember that.
It's okay if they ask you about the pedigree of a cow back 5 or 6 generations, but don't ask you what's in what field.
I can tell you where a cow stood when Doug and I were kids and what her name was and what her pedigree was, but I can't remember what kind of corn and beans we grow. It just doesn't stick in my head.
Like I said, that's why we feed off each other, because we joke about it back and forth. I know the cows too, but I don't know them as well as Dave. I'm not going to deny it. I still do a lot of work around the dairy too. I do all the breeding. I do all the feeding. I look after the calves. It works well together.
We've talked a little bit about where your farm has come from, the history of it, and what it looks like now. What are you looking at for down the road here? You've mentioned that you've bought a second operation to try and make room for more of your children. What does succession look like for Maplevue Farms?
We probably went through the hardest succession part, what they always call it, the in-between one, where you've taken over from mom and dad. You don't know which kids are going to be interested. And we usually sit down with the lawyer and the accountant every few years, and that'll be coming up here probably in a year or two. Dave and I are getting into mid-50s pretty shortly. We can't keep this pace up forever. We're trying to let Dave's kid run the other farm without a whole lot of supervision, and it's getting better all the time. We're making room for as many kids that want to be involved. How it's going to look, whether we end up with 2 or 3 companies going down the road and breaking it up, it's going to be fair, equitable. The youngest ones are 16 right now, so within 5 to 7 years, hopefully they'll have an idea whether they want to be involved or not.
I think that all the kids will be involved. It's just whether they're going to be involved on a full-time basis or have an off-farm job and be one of them ones at the weekend help or the busy time help or something like that. It's just my eldest son will be turning 22 here shortly. He runs the secondary farm with a fair bit of assistance from us time to time, but we're trying to let him grow his wings over there. You know, Doug's got a daughter that's done college. He's got a daughter that's, done first year university. My second oldest son just finished writing his last exam last Friday and started a job on Monday. And he's hoping that he can do this job, live at home, and still help out a fair bit. So it's just to be decided how many kids want to farm and what our farm will look like. We always talked about a butterfly at some point, splitting the farm into 2. It may end up splitting into 3 or 4. We don't know. They say brothers can farm, but it's tougher on cousins to try and farm together. So we'll see what the next 5 years bring and how many kids truly want to end up owning a chunk of the farm.
And we got to be careful because there'll be partners involved with either boys or the girls, and the partners, whatever partner they choose, it can add negatively too. We got to protect our assets that we built up here too and earn their way in, but still be fair.
And you need to set it up so that the next generation can be successful too. And if there's personalities that just simply don't get along, whether it's cousins that don't get along or whether it's partners that for one reason or another don't fit with someone else there, it's not fair to try and keep everything together because that's just a recipe for failure.
The other thing that our parents maybe instilled in us that I find very important is the community aspect here. We're in North Perth and we like to give back to the community. So when there's a need of something, we try to help out. We give back. We sit on board of directors. We sit on church boards. I've been on municipal council for too darn long. I think, we do charity auctions. Before COVID, we used to do some Youth for Christ auctions and stuff like that. I'm the auctioneer, but Doug's my ring man. And at a couple of these auctions now, we are the entertainment. I've been known to auction with a Leaf jersey on, and Doug's been known to take bids with a Habs jersey on. Now, usually I win those arguments because I do have the microphone in my hand, but we do have an awful lot of fun. But it is also important, and I think it's been instilled in the kids to give back to their community. Our kids have been very involved in 4-H. I think I've been a 4-H leader for every one of Doug's kids and all mine through their dairy show careers and stuff, and several of them have been to the Royal Winter Fair, and they've even won classes at the Royal Winter Fair. So it's been pretty cool to watch them grow up, and we want to make sure that we instill in them that you give back to your community. You don't take, you give back.
And I think the other thing we've really done is try to support the community. We support local businesses all we can. We're not afraid to tell people where we do business. And there's usually a reason why we do business. We don't go out for the cheapest one. We look for somebody that's going to give us good service, good product, and a reasonable price.
So World Milk Day is coming up on June the 1st, and I hear that you are planning a fundraiser for that day. What are you doing, and where's the money going?
The new radio station in Listowel, the ranch, we're trying to get them to broadcast on top of our robot that day to promote World Milk Day. We're hoping to raise some money to give schools in North Perth or Perth County milk for a day, a week, a month in September.
I think that'd be neat.
I just think it would be so cool that here's a radio station on World Milk Day sitting on top of our robot room, transmitting while the cows are getting milk below them.
That sounds like a great project. We'll have to tune in on June the 1st and listen for them broadcasting from your barn. I just have one question for each of you left here, and I'll start with you, Doug. Which Canadian team is most likely to win the Stanley Cup?
Oh, it's the Habs all the way.
And Dave, I'm going to ask you the same question there.
There's only 3 words to answer that. Go Leafs, go.
And on that note, we've been talking to Doug and Dave Johnston of Maplevue Farms, dairy farm near Listowel, Ontario. Join us next time when our guest will be Mercedes Unwin from Agscape, and we'll be talking about education and agriculture in the classroom in Ontario. You've been listening to The Back 40, brought to you by Trillium Mutual Insurance. Be sure to subscribe to The Back 40 wherever you find your favorite podcasts so that you don't miss an episode. The Back 40, bringing the ag community together, one podcast at a time. I'm Mike Brine. Until next time, take care and stay safe.